Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the BAFA Conversation Series with eminent professors of accounting and finance. I'm Arman Eshraghi, Professor of Finance and Chair of CPAF, which is the Professorial Committee of the British Accounting and Finance Association. It is my great pleasure to be hosting Professor Christine Cooper today. Um, Professor Cooper holds the chair of accounting at the University of Edinburgh Business School, and she's an eminent critical accountant. She's a former editor-in-chief of the Critical Perspectives on Accounting, which is a highly regarded journal in this area. Um, Her research examines the economic, political, and social impact of accounting across multiple areas and themes. And she has been highly impactful in the field. But without further ado, let me uh, get to Christine herself. And Christine, it's a great pleasure to have you with us in the podcast. Um, can I ask you to briefly introduce yourself and your background in your own words, and maybe talk a little bit about your academic journey from the early beginnings up until today? Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you, Arman. I can't, yeah, if someone says I'm Eminem, honestly, it really doesn't like me at all. And most of my friends and family, they would really laugh at this. So yeah, but I still appreciate it. So thank you for that. Um,
Pleasure.
yeah, so my academic journey, okay, I actually left school before A levels. So but I actually worked in a timber merchant's as a bookkeeper. And it was when I say a timber merchants, it was actually more like a whole timber holding company. So it was had lots of clients, so really big ledgers, a lot going on. And I worked for them as a bookkeeper. So I completely became, I don't know, an ace, but really probably an eminent kind of bookkeeper. So I, completely understood debits and credits and doing the accruals and doing the prepayments and working out the depreciation. I also, like, part of my role was if there were invoices that were kind of difficult to decide which ledger they should be put in, I
Hmm.
was like the troubleshooter. If there were people that put in claims that maybe that, they shouldn't have, although we had questions about them. I was the person to kind of deal with all those kind of issues and problems. Um, but and also I have to say this. I mean, I'm very old, so it was a completely different world. And um, yeah, of course, women's liberation was a big project that was kind of underway. But in the company that I worked for, if you were a woman, you weren't even listed in their phone directory, the internal phone directory, which I
Wow.
suppose it may have been like to protect you. I don't know. But of course, everyone would just write in between the kind of like the type pages. They would just handwrite in the numbers of women that they needed. So anyway, it was a completely different world. And I remember watching people that were doing their professional exams, and I remember thinking, well, I should never have left school without thinking about trying to go to university. And so I suppose I kind of like had a mission then to go to university. So it was 2 years at night school doing my A levels. And then I was, accepted to do a business studies degree where I specialized in accounting and finance. Um, so that was, amazing. I mean, I was 21 when I went back to university, and I can remember sitting in my first lecture. I was in tears because I was so happy, that so my value in so I think I wasn't on some kind of mill that I was just kind of going to go
Yeah.
like a sausage machine going through. So I probably had a slightly, I mean, of course, the difference between 18 and 21, most of the students, I felt so much older.
Hmm.
Um, but I mean, in terms of actual age, it probably wasn't like I was really the elderly person in the class. But I think it kind of meant that I suppose, had a slightly different approach to
Yeah.
being a student. I was also used to getting up early in the morning to get the train into central London. I lived in London. So I would be up early kind of working,
Yeah.
and yeah, so in some ways I suppose I was a slightly different kind of student, but honestly it was amazing and I loved it. Um, and then I decided not to become an accountant, but to go into education. And I took a job at kind of like a further education college.
Hmm.
I loved it. I loved teaching. Um, but the head of, I mean, I'm forever thankful to this woman. Her name's Frances Huggett. She was my lecturer in accounting when I was a student, and she came to see me, and she
Hmm.
said, this can't be your career. You can't do this." Which actually, I mean, it would have been. I mean, it was a great career, and it's very rewarding. But anyway, so she kind of insisted that I had to go and do a master's degree, and she bought me the books to go to London, even though I didn't even have a place, to go to London School of Economics to do a kind of a part-time master's degree that they did at the time, which was completely mind-blowing. Also, so that was good. And then when I was there, someone said, "Oh, there's a job where I work. This is Dave Trodden." And Mary Simpson. So lots of people kind of helped me along the way,
Hmm.
um, to ask me to apply for things.
Hmm.
Um, and then in the end, yeah, I got a job at Strathclyde. So Peter Pope, who was the head of department then, called me out of the blue. I mean, I can't, and I loved Glasgow. So the opportunity, even if I didn't get the job, to get a kind of a trip to Glasgow was lovely. So anyway, I got the job, and I suppose, yeah, I mean, I was a long time at Strathclyde. I never really imagined that I'd leave, but in the end, I did, and I went to Edinburgh. But yeah, so I think probably my career trajectory was probably different.
Hmm.
Um, but I suppose everyone actually is going to
Oh yeah.
be different and unique. Yeah,
Absolutely, absolutely. That's very enlightening to hear that. So in fact, one of the themes we touch upon in these conversations is academic careers and how we as academics understand them, and how the kind of story that we tell ourselves and we tell
yeah, yeah,
the rest of the world. Um, um, so I'd like to ask you two questions now, one after the other. So I'd like to focus with you on the two ends of the academic career trajectory. So firstly, I'd like to start with early career academics, many of whom would be listening to this conversation. Um, uh, Clearly, the demands and expectations on early career academics now are
yeah.
significantly different from what it was probably decades ago. What words of advice do you have for early career academics in getting their foot in the door, in getting themselves established, in in how to shape their academic identity and craft it early on? We would love to hear your insights on that.
Yeah. I yeah. I mean, of course, there are. I suppose in some ways there are no shortcuts.
True.
You have to put in the hard yards, and I think that was like definitely being an academic today is so much more challenging
Hmm.
than when I started. Nonetheless, I think um, yeah, there are kind of, I think people look for quick hits and
Yeah.
easy kind
Wins.
of
Yeah.
routes. And
Yeah.
of course, sometimes that is possible. I'm not saying you shouldn't look for those things, but I think in the long run, is doing the hard work.
Yes.
So I I remember sitting in the library at London School of Economics, and I mean, this was a completely different time, and I was really interested. Although I was actually doing a part-time PhD with Jeanette Rutherford, and it was really finance, um, and she was amazing. Um, but I remember sitting in the library reading AOS, and in those days, of course, there weren't that many issues, to be honest. So you could start with the first one and sit, and that's what I did. I actually sat and read, just read and read and read. Um, and I think that honestly put me in really good stead
Hmm.
for the rest of my career. And of course, it's impossible now in 2026. Nobody could read every single article in any
Very true.
journal at all, ever.
Yeah.
So, but of course, it's a question of being much more selective. But
Hmm.
you need to sit down and read the whole thing and try to understand it, and yeah, try and make sense of it in terms of like what's going on in the world today and so on and so forth. So I think, I mean, of course, and young academics, of course, they work really hard, but don't feel, I think they shouldn't feel too put upon doing that because it's lovely work in some ways. So yeah, so I think hard work. I
Hmm.
think um I think I've kind of name checked a few people, but there are so many people throughout my career that have been so helpful and kind. I mean, genuinely lovely to me.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, like not seeing everyone as the enemy. I've
Yeah.
seen people that, like they say to me, "Oh, I don't want to present this at a conference because someone might steal my idea." And it's like, no, nobody's going to steal your idea and do it in the way that you would do it.
Hmm.
So we all, I think you have to have a lot of confidence in like your ability to say something interesting and important. Um, so yes, so I would say build as many contacts as you can.
Yes.
And like
Yes.
so, building your social capital is really important. I think the other thing I would say is, of course, it's good to get to know as many people as you can. But I, I don't know. I kind of, and I mean, this is awful, but I think we kind of, as young academics, it's easy to become completely starry-eyed about
Hmm.
like the journal editors and like the really important people. And actually, yeah, there's something I find that I don't really like. That like knowing the right people doesn't really help you get your work published in their journals. What really is going to help you get your work published is if it's really the best work that you can ever submit.
Yes.
And of course, even then, you'll still get rejected.
Oh, yeah.
So I think, yeah, so I suppose that's another thing, but working with, yeah, I mean, learning from rejection, seeing it
Hmm.
as a step forward rather than a step backwards.
Yes.
Um, yeah, make as many friends, yeah, really, and try to help other people too, because those things are, like make your job so much better. So don't see everyone as the enemy. Work with
Hmm.
people, work hard. Yeah,
I
I
think
mean,
that's. Mhm.
yeah, this is, well, perhaps I'll say more about this later on when I talk about journals, but
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
think also don't be starry-eyed about the publishing system.
Yes.
So yeah, so that's another thing to talk about.
Absolutely, we will. I very much sympathize with your earlier points about not seeing all of this as a zero-sum game where you either win or you lose and your counterparty does the opposite. This is really not the case. There are many situations where you could both benefit from sharing ideas, conversations, and growing together. And I completely agree with
Yeah,
it. I do sometimes see, for example, PhD advisors advising their students to guard their ideas to themselves and not talk to even their fellow
yeah,
PhDs in the same office, which I think is the absolutely wrong advice.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
so you're absolutely right. So have a growth mindset. I completely agree. Um, and the resilience indeed. Now, let's skip over mid-career academics and focus on uh, um, established full professors. You've been a full professor yourself for many years. CPAF, as you know, is the community of full professors in accounting and finance. Um, my question to you is, how do you personally view the role and responsibility of a full professor of accounting, having changed again over the years? How do you see it now, and where do you see it going? And I know that's a big question, but
yeah,
to the extent that you can tackle that.
yeah. Um, yeah. I think as right, so as yeah, I suppose there's kind of lots of different dimensions to this. So
Yeah.
there's the in university, of course, and like love it or hate it. Like you I mean, you have a job, and part of the job is to satisfy the needs of the ref.
Hmm.
And while I don't think that that necessarily makes for like the best research environment, um, I I can honestly say that the pressure of the ref, my feeling is someone might disagree with me, and honestly, I'm often wrong about a lot of things, so I might be wrong about this, but I don't feel it's made me more productive. I
Yeah,
actually feel it's made me more anxious.
indeed.
So, I think that if I was in charge for a day, that's one of the things I would say. Look, we need to have another look at this. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, and yeah. So people that have, well, I mean, yes, people that have won Nobel Prizes have actually said that they wouldn't get a job as an academic today because they wouldn't meet the REF criteria. And yet, that like what they've done was slow and painstaking, and it won them a Nobel Prize that's actually really served humankind.
Indeed.
So yeah, anyway, but nonetheless, it is your job. You don't want to get fired, so you do have to kind of like get on with that. Um, and of course, your teaching is still really important because you're bringing like all of your research knowledge to your teaching, which is going to make it, hopefully, it should make it really rich. So I think you should take that responsibility really seriously. Of course,
Hmm.
also like working with your PhD students, and um, that's so important as well. So actually, I just examined it. We called it the grandma PhD because the student, his supervisor was actually like supervised by someone that was on the examining jury. It was in
All right.
France.
Okay.
So yeah, so it's kind of like now three generations. But I think that's where your legacy probably will be, is with
Yes.
with your
Yes.
PhD students if you're lucky enough to be able to take on PhD. So that's really, really important. And of course, there's all the other service to the community that doesn't count, like reviewing, like being a journal editor, or doing a special issue, all of that stuff.
Hmm.
And that's, I think, also quite important because, like, I don't know, but probably like I don't know, you have more time, but you should try and create some space to do that kind of service to the community in all different ways, because there's
Hmm.
lots of different roles.
Yeah.
um yeah, and then there's outside of the university, which is like, honestly, so people are under so much pressure to publish,
Oh, yeah.
to get their good teaching evaluations, to spend time going to conferences, to doing presentations, to trying to get onto the next research project. I mean, we are very, very pressured. So then to say also, look, perhaps you should think about stuff outside of the university. Um, that may, I mean, people have got families, they've got children. People like middle career researchers. That's the time probably when they should be getting like a little bit of time off to have their paternity and maternity leave, and all of that stuff. But of course, the system is like relentless. Doesn't
Yes.
um, it doesn't help in those issues. Yeah, so perhaps thinking about doing stuff outside might be a lot, but I do actually think that we have a public responsibility,
Yeah.
especially in a post-truth world.
Hmm.
So there's so much, you sit, I don't know about you, but I'm like, like Mrs. Angry at Glasgow, and I kind of sit and I watch people, they come up with the stuff, and you say, oh my God, like, why would you even think that? So, especially with economic issues, that I'm not saying
Hmm.
we're economists and we know all about economics, but some of the stuff you just think that is just completely wrong. That this is going to bring wealth, or this is going to,
I see.
and I think as academics, we should have a bigger role
Correct.
in talking about our research. Not that we necessarily have the solutions for everything, but we could say, look, while I was doing my research, this is what I
Hmm.
found about this.
So you mean
And
being
okay,
grounded in reality and passing the common sense check, you mean in that sense, right?
yeah, but also I suppose like, of course, we're not neutral.
Hmm.
That would be
Yeah.
completely, nobody's really neutral, but we don't have, well, if we're not sponsored by large corporations, which
Hmm.
most people, at least in critical accounting, of course, aren't, or we're not sponsored by political parties or anything else, then I think we sh yeah, we should um, stand up sometimes and yeah, I, I suppose this also comes back to the whole publishing thing back again, is most of our research, like if we think that this is how we disseminate our ideas and what our findings, which it is, um, in terms of an output, it actually isn't very effective at changing the public debate
Yeah.
because most of our research is behind massive paywalls.
Hmm.
So, uh, as a kind of elderly academic, I know that when I retire, if I'm not made an emeritus professor and be able to at least have a login for our library, I wouldn't even be able to afford to read the
Yeah.
articles that I've written because they're most things are behind these huge paywalls.
Sure.
So I think it's trying to find ways of like disseminating what you've found. And people say, oh, it should be made easier or whatever. I mean, that may or may not be true, but definitely it should be made more freely available.
That's true. And many publishers are moving towards open access movements.
Well,
But,
they
but
say they are.
yeah.
So I know that Elsevier have started something called open accounting.
Hmm.
And at the moment, I think it is free and it
Hmm.
is open access, but they are going to start charging, I think I won't get this exactly right, but it's about $1,900 um, to be open access in this new journal. So
I
they're calling it open accounting, um, but in this case, it's not the readers that have to pay.
Yes, it's the
It's the author of the papers, that
yeah,
they have to pay.
correct.
So yeah,
Yeah, I know. It's a contrived issue. Um, but thank you. That was very insightful. So we keep coming back to the issue of journals. So let me take that on now. You've been a very successful editor of a highly regarded journal in accounting, and I know that you have served and continue to serve as associate editor and member of editorial boards of prominent journals. Um, with that hat on, how do you see research quality? How do you define research quality in accounting? And what advice you have again to authors who like to start impactful projects from early on, basically?
yeah. So the first thing to say is it's so important that you've read a good few papers in a
Mm.
journal before you try and publish in it. Um, so that I mean, I don't on a human level, it's a bit like when you go to a party and there's a group of people and they're all chatting. So you don't, even if you kind of know some of them, or they say, oh, you don't just jump straight into the conversation with what you have to say.
Yeah,
You have to listen to what they're saying.
you
And
hang
then if
around
you,
in the corner a little bit. Yeah.
oh, yes, well,
Yeah.
just so that you're not kind of like dominating the
Yeah.
conversation, you're hearing people and you're recognizing that they have opinions and lives and so on and so forth. So yeah, so you don't just jump in and start talking. And we've all been in that situation where someone
Yes.
has just come in and they just want to get their stuff out. So I think, yeah, so making sure that you're building on the conversation within the journal is so important. And that actually is, while I'm saying that, um, it's so exclusionary because people that back to this people that don't have access to those journals,
Hmm.
easy access, their university libraries can't afford subscriptions, or yeah, they're, I don't know, they've not had the training to read all the stuff in that journal. There's language is a huge barrier for lots of people. um yeah, but that is actually something that does help you get published. But I also recognize that that's something that we also need to think about because that is actually quite exclusionary.
Hmm.
Um, People have like in different, yeah, different environments, their research is just as good, just as important, just as careful, just as intelligent. But if it doesn't kind of fit into the right mold, then it won't get published.
Correct. Yeah.
So I think that's, I mean, and so, this is like how to do it, but it's not necessarily that this is the best way of doing it.
Hmm. Hmm.
So yeah, so there's that. I think the other thing is to be really, I suppose, careful about absolutely, you know, I mean, and this is the hard work, I suppose, polishing and polishing, refining your argument, talking to people about it to see what, they think. So something that may seem completely obvious to you,
Yeah.
when you actually talk to other people about it, then even as you're talking, you start to realize I'm not explaining this well. Even if it's
Hmm.
like the ideas don't change, it's like it's making sure that you've done the most clear, best
Hmm.
work possible before you submit it to a journal even. So I think you have to send the piece that you'll be proud if it was published as it is. Of course, that's never going to happen. And that is something that's completely changed in my lifetime. I remember the first paper that I submitted, someone said to me, "Oh, it doesn't have to be perfect because the reviewers will make you change it anyway." And in those days, probably there was less pressure to publish, less people in the field.
Correct.
Um, so probably publishing was easier. Um, but I think these days and and I suppose you have to send it knowing that it could well be rejected.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. So, and look, I think, I don't know, but CPA started to do this more often. So we used to do something called, I mean, it wasn't official, but we used to call it a reject and resubmit.
Hmm.
So the editor would, spend a long time summarizing the reviewers, saying, what might help. And it was saying, look, this is going to be like a whole load of work and perhaps something that's, fundamentally a slightly different paper. But if you'd like to go through all of that process and take these comments on board, we'd be happy to see it back here.
Yeah.
And I think if you get a letter like that, of course, it's hugely disappointing. But I've seen papers that, I've done that too, and they've come back and they've been amazing and got published. And so, yeah, I don't know if
That
this
that
is,
that's definitely that definitely hits the nail on the head. Exactly. The um I think your point about finding the right language and
yeah,
with the literature in the target journal and trying to make a contribution and join the conversation, right? And talking over uh
yeah,
others. I think that's absolutely true. And I would say I think also some sincerity and honesty if your results are for example, going against what the literature has said, don't hide that. Try to just be
yeah.
upfront.
So look, this is really interesting. And
Mhm.
yeah, yeah, we don't know
Exactly.
why. Yeah,
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 yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
This is I think this is great advice. Um, Now, it's very difficult to go to any conference and not hear about artificial intelligence, Christy.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
I'm eager to know again, as a critical accountant, how you see AI changing. Well, I guess we could talk about the landscape of the accountancy profession, but that's a big topic on its own. But but as professors of accounting and finance, how do you think AI is helping or perhaps not helping us in doing what we do?
yeah. Okay, I'm going to talk about it. I'll talk about it just from the publisher's point of view,
Yes.
and then from the academic point of view. Okay, so when I was like one of the editors at CPA,
Hmm.
um, there was a huge change in the editorial like software.
Hmm.
And I think it was to try to introduce more AI into the reviewing process. So if you want to, and we were really, we had some training courses on this, of course, when the new software came in, and we got the sense that that yeah we would, I don't know, not going to be required to, but we could be helped by
Mhm.
artificial intelligence, in the
Mhm.
sense that, like, we'd receive a paper, it would have keywords, and the system can give you a big list of potential reviewers. And they pick on other things, so it's not just whether the reviewers are interested in that area. They look at their H indices and all of these other metrics, and they come up with the list of reviewers that you can pick.
Yes.
Um, and I think I think that's not a good thing. I think it's for the editors to read a paper when they receive it,
Mhm.
not to just say, "Oh yeah, this paper says it's about this, this, and this." And I think if you're seriously embedded in a community and you read the paper, you may think about reviewers that don't necessarily say that they publish in that area, but you kind of understand that the
Yes.
theories that they use are very relevant, or they've had similar insights, even if it's slightly a different area, or yeah, you have I think you have a much better sense if you read the paper when it comes to picking a reviewer. Um, of course, I've clicked on the button to see who they recommend. I have never seen anyone that I would even dream of choosing as the reviewer. So it could be okay, AI needs more development in this area or whatever. But at the moment, this is a kind of a downward step. And we also know that reviewers have started to use generative AI to do reviews.
Yes, that's
So,
true. That's true.
and of course, we also know that there are authors that use AI to do manuscript to make their manuscripts.
Very
So
true. Yeah.
if you, so the worst situation is that the system receives an AI generated manuscript. The editor just clicks on the two top reviewers for that manuscript that's also generated by AI. And then those reviewers, they also use AI to do the review. And I think this is completely possible. So I think we have to worry about this a
Absolutely.
lot.
Absolutely. Yes.
Um, I think, um, yeah, that's not to
And
say
there are
that
no easy solutions, it seems.
no,
Either.
that's not to say at all that AI can't be really helpful in terms of scraping a lot of stuff. But I think if you see it as a research tool, I mean, I don't know, perhaps we don't all do this, but I know that if there's something, I don't know, if I'm reading a paper and they mention an author, I would put it into Google. I shouldn't, but I will put it into Google and look them up and see what else they've written. And so,
Yes.
I mean, we all
Yes.
use the internet as a
Oh, yeah.
research tool,
Yeah.
and I think generative AI also. I mean, they can write reports and they can do quite a lot. But I
Hmm.
think you need to see it, then you need to do the hard work again. So just because, like we were talking earlier about, Wikipedia, and we know that like lots of the stuff in it isn't quite right.
Correct.
So I think as academics, we need to understand that what we're looking at, we need to check it, or, and we need to cite it, and we need to say, look, this is what this page says, or this book says, or this other article says, and so that then other people can read it and they can see your sources and they can
Hmm.
decide for themselves. So I don't think we should be frightened of AI, but I
Hmm.
think we need to make much stricter rules and put
Yeah.
boundaries around um,
Hmm.
what it can be used for and what it can't be used for. I mean,
Definitely.
I was at a kind of a workshop, and it like people were saying that they've actually like they get their students to do projects, but they get generative AI to make up interviews that then they have to analyze. And
Wow.
I was thinking, well, is it perhaps, well, I mean, I suppose you could give your students 20 interviews and say, right, how would you, like, what do you think the main themes are or whatever? And the interviews could be generated by
Mhm.
AI. And as long as everyone knows that this is what's happening, perhaps that could be a good teaching tool. Because I actually tried it, and it's like, imagine that I'm asking, I don't know, like someone in Bolivia about this. And by the way, I don't know whether what AI came up with was authentic or not. But yeah, definitely, I like we make up cases for students with fictitious numbers and get them to look at things, and everyone knows that that's what we're doing.
Yes.
I think that's fine. But I suppose the danger in what I've just said is like, so these students, when they're doing their PhDs, they get all their interviews that are just completely made. Most supervisors would know this, I'm sure. But that's the
Yeah.
danger.
Yeah. It is. Absolutely. Absolutely. And things we should continue talking about openly. And
And I don't think,
it's
I don't know what you think, but I don't think we're good at that.
no, no. Often, often I think the conversation revolves around the transactional uses of the tool rather than the changes it's making in our profession, in
Yeah,
the more macro broad changes. Um, and you're right. I mean, again, I'm also an editor, and I can see that there are manuscripts coming in that you suspect of being significantly helped by AI, but then again, it's extremely difficult to prove and disprove it.
that's right. Yeah,
And my own personal sense is um, maybe we should just allow people to use it as a research assistant in the same way that in the old days, people would have, or still, people would employ expensive research assistants to help them.
yes,
So it's in a way, it's perhaps democratizing the field because now you can do it for free or with a $20 subscription per month, right? Which is far more affordable than employing someone to do hours and hours of work for you. Um,
yeah,
so so maybe we should just allow people to use it, but then raise our expectations of in terms of the quality of the submissions and the quality of the contribution. Because I don't think AI is still significantly advanced enough to create high
yeah,
quality academic work. Intellectual contributions that we expect to read in top
yeah,
journals. I don't think
yeah,
it's there yet. So
yeah. And that's why I think, like with this function that you can use AI to
mm,
pick reviewers, it's like they can't do it in the way that humans do it.
absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. They're
So
getting smarter and
I,
smarter, but not there yet. Yeah, yeah.
I suppose then it's also back to the kind of like the truth issue, or
Hmm.
um, yeah, because AI can only scrape things from the internet,
Yeah.
and if it's scraping it from a source
Hmm.
um, that's untrue. I'm kind of hesitated, but that's ill-informed. Let's put it that way. Um, then the next, like the results of of the research are going to be ill-informed, and then you're going to get a whole cascade of like completely bogus, bonkers
Oh
ideas
yeah.
that everyone
Oh,
just accepts as true. I mean, we have
yeah.
that in society anyway enough. So this is going to, make it, yeah, make it even worse.
Fair point. Fair point. Indeed. I mean, this is such an interesting area, and we can continue our discussion for hours. But unfortunately, time is
Yeah, yeah, I'm
against
getting,
us.
yeah, yeah.
So I just want to thank you, Professor Cooper, for sharing such thoughtful, insightful reflections. I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. I think
Oh, that's
many
so
of our
lovely. Thank you.
listeners, early career researchers, and professors will find your guidance invaluable. It was a pleasure to have you on the podcast. I
Thank
wish you
you.
continued success in your leadership, in your research at Edinburgh, and your contributions to the profession. And to our listeners, thank you once again for joining us. We look forward to welcoming you back to our next episode. Thank you again, Christine.
Yeah, thank you.